What's up, y'all? It's your boy Karceno here, Mr. Chicago Cub himself. I ain't one of these bandwagon Cub guys. Sox fans trying to jump on the bandwagon with that. Well, I want Chicago to win. They say that, punch him right in the face. You think a Mets fan gonna say that about the Yankees? Yankees winning? Think the Mets fans gonna be like, well, it's only New York. Give him one of those. Cubs don't roll like that. We ain't finna root for the Sox under no circumstances. They'd be like, you need the Sox to win this game to get in the playoffs. Forget the Sox. Who they playing against? Don't root for the Sox ever. Now, let's bring up the moments of why I'm here. I did a Dana White video talking about him being a troll and everything else, and what I come to find out was that I'm partially wrong. There is a method to the madness that is going on behind UFC. It is not all Dana White that's doing all of this. My MMA colleagues said, look, we love you. You know, we remember you when you had MMA Socialists. We used to listen to the shows, and you guys had a great interview. You guys had a great lineup of podcasts. You know, like, you guys actually did something. And rest in peace to 916 Chris, who was an MMA guy too. We wanted him to work with us on the show, and he said no because he just wanted to argue with us. I was like, well, cool, come on the show and argue with us. He was like, no, I'm already doing my own thing over here. But this is the truth behind the Ariel Helwani lifetime ban that had a 24-hour limit before it was lifted. I knew it was going to get lifted. That's why I said, oh, this is going to get lifted. And I'm going to wait till they lift it before I make my video. I'm not going to just jump out there. And it's a good thing I did, because I was going to blame Dana White for this whole thing. And it's not all Dana White. This is like Darth Vader and the Emperor. There's an emperor behind it. Lorenzo Fertitta, the chairman and CEO of the UFC. He is the main guy who approves all this stuff. Dana is just playing a role. He's the face, where Lorenzo don't like to be on the screen at all. If he can help it. Now, if Forbes come for an interview, then he'll sit down in a chair. But he don't want to sit down and talk to some blogger about MMA. That's Dana's job. So he's the one pulling strings, and Dana's just dancing to the music. So that's what's been going on. People's like, oh no, he's really active in what's happening here. And sometimes he oversteps Dana, and Dana just has to go with it even if he doesn't agree. You know, so he's really just a puppet. So I said, oh, okay. So Lorenzo's the guy we got to aim the gun at. Because they was like, that guy there, you know, they got the casinos. Those are gangsters. I'm like, look, I don't care. I don't work for them. They don't own me. And this is why I wanted to make the video, so that you would know what happened. Now, on the show, Ariel Helwani, let's go when he first got started. Let's start from the beginning like we normally do. When he was first getting started in his business, back when like UFC 90 something, this guy was green, wet behind the ears a little bit. He's just some guy that really loved MMA and followed these guys and studied, just like a lot of people on social media, YouTube, everything. It all started for the love and the passion for the sport. And he worked his way up. He wanted to be in broadcasting. He did study broadcasting in school. He did want to do this job. This is what he wanted to do solely. From the blogs to the podcasts to everything that he's doing, this is what he wants to do. And when it came to MMA fighting, you know, and all of this stuff here, he knew a lot about all the fighters, and people were listening to him, and he was building an audience. Okay, so UFC, they weren't stupid. when they came and said, hey, we need to get this guy. This guy made himself known to the fact where UFC said this guy here is the face and represents MMA on a basis. So UFC wanted him to represent them. So when you see Ariel Helwani, you think UFC. And it makes them look good because they got this guy, and everybody who see him, anything they know about MMA, most people would tune in to him. He did great interviews. He was great journalism. His problem is he's an MMA guy. He's not just some sports broadcaster or journalist. He's an MMA guy. He loves the sport. So he doesn't want to compromise that. And the first problem they had with him is when they had the MMA fighting and the sports blog nation that owns that. And Fox Sports 1 had him on the show. They UFC segment. When they had him on there, it was like, oh, okay, it's becoming a conflict of interest because when they're on MMA fighting, that's like freestyle. They can talk about anything they want. It's an open forum. So when he got on the show and they were going to take him off the air, he was like, we can't have you on the air. If you're going to be on MMA fighting, you got to like leave the show. And he was like, look, I'm not going to badmouth the UFC on Fox. That's dumb. You know, the UFC is on Fox, so why would I bash it? He said, but on MMA fighting, you know, I don't want to leave those guys. You know, those guys have been good to me. Dana White was saying, okay, you can go back on and be on the show. It's cool. And he was cool to him. When he started working on with Dana White for the 97, Dana waited for him, gave him interviews. When the UFC had bad fight cards, he would make sure that Helwani got all the interviews that he needed. But in the sport, it's always the interview they don't like that sticks out more than the interview that they love. The one interview they don't like, after 1,000 that they love that you did or just didn't care or paid any attention to, it's always the one interview. And the Nate Diaz interview is what did it. Because Nate Diaz went ahead and said, you know what? I don't do a lot of interviews, which he don't. He's not a great interviewer at all if you're a company like UFC. He's not a company man. They never meant for him to be, he's a journeyman in the company, is the way they want to put him. But he's actually a great athlete. Nate. Nick, they both too wild. Nick and Nate Diaz, they too unpredictable. But you basically are the WWE anyway. Market that. But they feel that these guys, they can't control them. So they're like, look, let's just use them to get beat up by the guys that we like. And then that's it. But the problem is, you can't really beat those guys up. Nick, if he stopped smoking weed, he would be probably great. But his problem is he can't let go of the cannabis to get himself in condition to keep continuously to be great. Nate Diaz, who was always the better fighter to me, is the one that's training in shape and ready to go. You know, they both like they've been hitting the head too much, but they sharp what they know what's going on now. The words might not come out right, but they know what's going on in the sport. And they like, look, we want to get paid. You're going to have to take care of us. You know, we know you don't like us. We know you want us to lose to these guys, but here's the kicker. We're going to beat they A when you put us in the ring with them. That's the style that he comes with. He does an interview with him, and I guess they don't like the fact that he said, oh, did you use the incident from 2 years ago to fuel you to go ahead and, you know, beat Conor McGregor? He didn't say, what is your thoughts about what happened 2 years ago where Dana White said that you guys don't move the pendulum or don't move the needle at UFC. He didn't say that. But they took it as that. And they just reacted hastily and was all bent out of shape about it. And he was like, wow. And then people were like, yeah, you might lose your credential over this interview. And he was like, wow, what did I say wrong? He was like, I asked the guy some questions, and he said, well, yeah, I used that as energy to, to fuel. It was the fact that Nate Diaz was on that interview, and he was telling the truth about the UFC. That's what made Lorenzo upset. And of course, if Lorenzo's upset, then Dana's going to be upset. So that's like Nate Diaz is on there talking about how the UFC wanted him to lose to Conor McGregor and was mad he lost. And after the fight, they were like, yeah, you're going to fight Conor again. Like, we got to get that win back because you weren't supposed to win. So they want to get him back in the ring. And he was like, look, pay us instead of paying these garbage fighters that you got that's coming in here and they're not good. Pay your athletes. Pay the ones that's actually working hard. Make sure that we're good. That way the sport will keep going instead of having this guy you bringing in that's, come on in, fight for $2,000. Boom, and he lose. Come on in, here's your $2,000. Boom, he lose. It's like, what are you doing? You're not going to grow the sport that way. But what they doing is buying names. So they were mad. Then the Brock Lesnar news, which he was reporting. There was nothing on there where they sent him saying, look, Brock Lesnar's coming here, but this is exclusive news. Don't report on it. We gonna break the story on our own. He didn't say that breaking news is that he's coming and he's fighting. He's just saying Brock Lesnar's return is coming. He didn't say who he fighting on at UFC 200 and none of that stuff. He just said Brock Lesnar's return is coming back to the UFC. Then it ended up being UFC 200. They're like, you broke the news. It's like, no, he really didn't. He just stated what he heard. This is journalism. No one told him like, hey man, you got to put a gag order on that. And you can't say this or you can't say that or where his sources come from. I mean, duh, that's like one of us announcing a fight has been made and somebody banning us. And we're saying, look, it's going to be made. We don't know if it's made or not. It might not happen. It might happen. But you can't control the media. Helwani don't work for UFC. You guys let him go at Fox anyway. Lorenzo didn't want him there. So he's not working for you guys. He didn't break any codes that you had. So he never should have been banned in the first place. So by them banning him, it made the whole UFC look like a total stupid joke. And see what they want, and this is what I want boxing fans to understand. This is what they wanted. They wanted Steve Kim. They want a Steve Kim. Now, anybody in the boxing world knows what I mean by Steve Kim. I like Steve Kim. Yeah, I mean, he knows about the sport. He reports it well, but he's a company man. He's going to do whatever the company says for him to do. Whoever side he's leaned on for that day, he's going to talk great about this fighter when he should talk real about this fighter or real about a certain fight. He's going to take the high road and do whatever company says do. He's a company man. So yeah, he's going to make the money while you probably work under him and don't get a dime like that Montoya guy. You know, you just get crumbs off the table. Like, here's some crumbs. Oh, thank you, sir. You know, that's what he does. And I don't know, that's what the game was. That's why Doug Fisher left and started doing his own thing, because Doug had more boxing knowledge. He was more of the, Steve Kim is more the showy type of guy, and he's more enthusiastic, rather, when you see him do his interviews. He has a lot of energy. Doug Fisher is the analyst guy, where he does the X's and the O's. He knows them all the way through. So it's very easy to listen to him and get the information right away, and he's going to tell you the truth. Where Steve Kim is just going to sugarcoat it and make it sound pretty, but it depends on which side of the fence he is. Now, if the person on the side of the fence he had a good night, then he's going to tell you all the good things that happened in the fight, and this will be a great breakdown too. But Steve Kim is the reason, him and Doug Fisher are the reason I started making videos and putting them on YouTube in 2006 when they had on Max Boxing The Next Round. And I said, wow, that's what I should be doing. And when I met them, they kind of like looked down on me. Steve Kim did. He like looked down on me like he was so up there, and I'm where he is. At this time, I'm like, at that time, I was like right there with him. I'm like, I'm subscribed to Mac Back Boxing. I got my t-shirt, my everlasting. I loved it. Because it was talking about boxing and I related. I watched the show. I love The Next Round. And it was exclusively on Max Boxing, which you guys don't know, it's very expensive. Especially back then. To have these videos on your own server. It's expensive now. Imagine back then when you didn't have YouTube to put your show on. You couldn't embed, they didn't have the embed YouTube code on your platform back then. You had to have your own server and your own videos. So you had to pay for storage. And you know how expensive that is. That's for anybody who had their own server. You know how expensive that stuff was. It got pretty expensive and pretty fast. Now, moving along, you had different scenarios going on within the company at UFC. And Lorenzo, he just don't like Ariel Helwani. Let's just put it that way. He don't like him. But with the overall support they saw in 24 hours, and that it was on Sports Center, ESPN, it was on Fox Sports, it was on every news station you can see. The podcasts were talking about it. MMA Weekly was talking about it. SureDog was talking about it. And SureDog really got everything started before Ariel became really the face of it. SureDog was the guys that really did it online on the internet, but they're all talking about how the UFC did him wrong. So all the fans this is an outrage. And they're up there trying to petition to get him back on UFC, to get him back into the fights. So naturally, they had to fix it. Oh, cooler heads, I think, will prevail. No, it wasn't that. It's a bad PR move. Because it shouldn't have happened in the first place. This is a company that is acquiesces in disorder. and since that's the case, we're left with these type of scenarios right now. And I think that's about does it. I think we're done here. It's your boy Karceno. I want to say, if Dana White's watching this video, I don't like you. Still. Don't like you. I don't want to shake your hand. Don't want to skate with you. No picture taking. Nothing. Stay clear away from me. And Lorenzo, I don't like you either. I'm out.